As I was driving to work this morning, I was thinking about a specific artwork. Now, I don't know why this is popping in my head, but Theodore Gericault, a true romantic artist, defines what it is to be a romantic artist. He learned at a very young age what it was to be an artist and continued his progress throughout his entire life. Now, romantic art has nothing to do with love and romance and hearts and rainbows and all that kind of stuff. It's more of an obsession with gruesome sorts of subject matters. And Gericault was obsessed with death, without any doubt. Many artists look for stories and themes that will illustrate the times in which they live, and Gericault was really no exception to that. Painted this 24-foot-long masterpiece at the Louvre. You know, the Raft of the Medusa. It caught many people's attention, was all over the news. It was kind of like the big-time story of his day. It's very similar to that Leonardo DiCaprio Titanic story, except completely different. It involves a French frigate called the Medusa off the coast of Senegal on a military exploration. The captain of the Medusa was awarded this captainship simply because of his loyalty to the monarchy. Numerous protests were made. Everybody knew this guy was completely inept, and he put the charge of navigation onto a guy that was equally inept to him. So basically this becomes a giant ship of bumbling idiots in charge. And the only people that knew what in the world was going on were the crew. And they were basically at the whim of this catastrophe leadership. Gosh, that sounds like something else I'm aware of. Yet I digress. The navigator decides he's going to take the most direct route down the coastline, even though everyone on the crew said, don't do that. There's a lot of really bad sandbars and things to watch out for. It's going to be a lot more chaotic if you go down the coastline. If you go out a little bit further and you take the normal route, you're going to be a lot safer. But he's like, no, it's going to be the easiest way is in a straight line, and I'm going to do it my way. And the other three ships that they were along with moved away from the shore and lost contact with the Medusa. And the Medusa ran aground about 30 miles off the coast of West Africa. Now, there were about 400 crew on the Medusa, and there were not enough lifeboats for all those people. So some of the more intelligent crew decided that they were going to build a raft that would comfortably hold about 200 of those folks. Again, nearly half of the passengers. The crew was also suffering from heat, dehydration, and death was all around them. This is the romantic artist's perfect storm. When Gericault started painting this work, he wanted it to be as true to life as humanly possible. He spent weeks on the preparation. He spent time interviewing the survivors of the wreck and did research at hospitals and morgues to see what people that had drowned looked like. He wanted to see newly dead flesh. It is said that he did so many sketches and preparatory works of the deceased that his studio began to look more like a morgue than an art studio. Many people were hesitant to get onto this raft. Huckleberry Finn and Jim made a better raft going down the Mississippi. They had about 40 people on that thing when it started to sink. And the beginning of the plan was that the lifeboats would pull along the raft. But the people on the lifeboat said, well, we'd probably make a little bit better time if we weren't having to tow this barge of garbage with people on it, anchoring us down. So they cut the ropes and took off. Because these rafts were a little bit sketchy, some of the crew decided, we'll try to stick it out on the Medusa. The captain did, however, return to the vessel, not to try to save anybody, of course, but to rescue his precious gold that was still on board the ship. He sent out a salvage crew, which ended up finding the ship intact. The following day, people were starting to attempt suicide. Some would jump in and just quietly drift off. The first night at sea alone, 20 men drowned. The only food that they had were a couple of sacks of biscuits and some cases of wine. With the waves going up and down at a pretty violent clip, people were starting to get thrown off the edges, so they were fighting to get to the center of the raft where it was more sturdy. It is said that dozens were killed fighting to get to the center of that rickety raft. The biscuits didn't last too long, so they started to eat anything that was made out of leather. They had consumed pouches, belts, and hats in order to have some form of nourishment in their stomachs. It is said that some even ate linen. Good thing Wilson wasn't there, he would have been a goner. They did manage to catch a few little fish and use that for nourishment as well, but that didn't really sustain very long. So they started to eat each other. That's right, as people started to perish, the survivors would eat the deceased. Most of those men were injured and suffering from hallucinations, so they decided to start executing people by throwing the weakest passengers off. Only 15 of those 147 survived. One of those ships that was going out with the Medusa on the voyage to Senegal found the raft and its passengers. The savior of the group is holding some sort of a cloth that has been spotted by the rescuing ship, and it was on purpose that he made this a black man, and he was a huge proponent of abolishing slavery. Now this is a monstrously big painting, and it's so big in fact that no one would ever really practically buy this thing. Gericault knew that going in. He knew that no private buyer would ever be crazy enough to buy this painting, so why did he do it? He wanted this painting to be placed in a state space or in a museum because he wanted his ideas of equality and the story of this crew to get out to the public. He ended up placing this work in the 1819 French Salon. This would be the first example of Romantic art being placed into the French Salon. This was a glimpse at the future of art. The times were becoming romantic, and there was nothing that the public or the government could do to slow it down. Now after the Salon, there was really nowhere to put it, so he just took the thing home, and he actually died still owning it. He was in poor health for about a year when he ended up passing away at the age of 32. He left everything that he owned to another one of his romantic French buddies, Eugène Delacroix, who was instrumental in preserving this painting. Gericault's family was going to chop this thing down and just destroy it and burn it, but a friend of his stepped in and said, "Nah, this thing's too good to just chop up and throw away. We need to keep this thing around." And after it was purchased by his friend, it ended up being placed in the Louvre, where it is still today. Well, and that was my commute, so I'm sure it's not quite exactly like your commute, but hopefully you enjoyed it. This has been Art 101 with me, Mr. Burgher. Feel free to click on other videos and content, share, interact with however you like. Thanks a lot for clicking on. Have a great day.